She walked into the bank that morning with a calm, confident step. It was a routine visit, or at least that's what she thought. The air inside was warm, and the soft hum of computers and murmured conversations felt familiar. She had been coming to this branch for years. She knew most of the tellers by name, and the manager even waved at her occasionally. To her, this bank was like a small, predictable part of her busy life, a place where things moved smoothly. But today would be anything but smooth. Her heels clicked lightly against the polished floor as she approached the counter. She carried herself with the quiet authority that came from years of building her business from the ground up. People respected her in every room she entered, yet here, in a place she thought she knew, something unexpected happened. The manager, a man she had spoken to before, looked up at her as she handed over her withdrawal slip. His face tightened and he gave her a look that she immediately recognized as more than mere confusion. "I'm sorry," he said, his tone formal but with an edge of something she couldn't quite place. "I can't process this withdrawal for you right now." She blinked, momentarily stunned. She had been a customer at this bank for years. She had deposited millions in her accounts, maintained credit lines, and even consulted with the bank on corporate matters. To be told she couldn't access her own money felt absurd, but she stayed calm. The shock could not show on her face because that was exactly what they were expecting. Hesitation, maybe even fear. She had learned long ago that calm was a powerful weapon. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice measured.
"Can you explain why?"
The manager shifted uncomfortably. "It's just protocol. I can't give you this service today. It's a matter of procedure." She looked at him, keeping her expression neutral. "I've followed this same procedure countless times," she said. "I am the account holder. I've spoken with you in this office before. Can you please clarify what has changed?" He hesitated, glancing around as if looking for someone to back him up. There was no one. The other tellers pretended to be busy with their computers, shuffling papers, avoiding eye contact. She noticed the slight tension in the room, the way people stiffened when they saw the situation escalating. Her mind was racing, but her voice remained calm. Calm, not weak. There was a difference. "I understand you have rules," she continued, "but I am asking you as a customer and as the account holder to process my withdrawal. If there is an issue, I need you to explain it clearly." He swallowed hard. "It's just policy. I can't do it." At that moment, she realized that this was not about policy. It was about something else, something personal. She had experienced subtle forms of discrimination before, in boardrooms, meetings, and even in social spaces. But today it was up close and direct, and she refused to let it slide. She took a slow breath, gathering her thoughts. There was no point in showing anger or frustration. That would play into their hands. She had to be sharp, precise, and undeniable. "I think there is a misunderstanding," she said, letting her words carry the weight of authority. "I am asking for a service that is rightfully mine. If you cannot provide it, I will need to escalate this immediately." The manager's expression flickered. She noticed the slight tightening of his jaw, the way he avoided her eyes. He realized she was serious, and that seriousness was not going to be dismissed with empty excuses. She waited a moment, letting silence fill the space between them. Silence could be uncomfortable, and often people revealed more than they intended when left in it. Finally, he muttered something about needing to check with corporate. It wasn't a real check, it was a stall. She knew it and she didn't flinch. She pulled out her phone, casually opening the contact for the bank's corporate office. She typed a message to her account manager, briefly explaining the situation. Within moments, she received a reply. "We see no issue. Please proceed with your withdrawal." She showed the message to the manager. His eyes widened, a flicker of panic crossing his face. He stammered, I need to follow proper protocol. I can't just..." She leaned slightly forward, her tone firm but calm. "You are already breaking protocol by refusing a legitimate request. I am giving you one more chance to do your job correctly. Process the withdrawal now." The tellers around them exchanged glances. Some tried to discreetly move away. Others whispered to each other. Everyone sensed the tension, the stakes, and the inevitable turning point. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity but was only a few minutes, the manager begrudgingly handed over the withdrawal. The moment was satisfying, but she didn't celebrate. She knew that merely completing the transaction did not erase the disrespect she had been shown. That had to be addressed, and swiftly. She closed her account folder slowly, her eyes never leaving the manager's. "Thank you," she said, her voice soft but unmistakably final. Now let's ensure this does not happen again. He swallowed hard, realizing that she meant more than words. Her presence was a reminder that authority came in many forms, not just in job titles. She had built an empire from scratch, and no amount of condescension or prejudice could shake her. As she walked out of the bank, she reflected on the incident. She could have reacted in anger, shouted, or stormed out. Many people in her position might have done so. But she chose something else. She had chosen control, clarity, and decisive action. That combination of traits was what had brought her success, and it was what allowed her to handle this challenge with dignity. In the car, she replayed the events in her mind. The manager's hesitation, the subtle fear that flickered when she pulled up the corporate message, the whispering of staff. It all told a story of systemic issues she was determined to confront. She realized that this was not just about her. It was about sending a clear message. Injustice, no matter how small or subtle, would not be tolerated. She also thought about the other customers who had witnessed the interaction. Some looked surprised, some looked uncomfortable, but she knew a few had noticed her calm confidence. Perhaps they would carry the lesson with them, that standing up for oneself did not require anger or aggression. It required clarity, composure, and authority. By the time she reached her office, she had made a decision. The manager would be held accountable, not in a petty way, but in a way that reinforced the standards of respect and professionalism that she believed in. She had spent years building her company, creating a culture of excellence and integrity. She would not allow someone else's arrogance or bias to undermine the principles she worked so hard to instill. She picked up the phone and called the regional director of the bank. She recounted the situation calmly, detailing the manager's refusal to provide service, the excuses, and the dismissive attitude. The director listened, clearly surprised that such behavior could happen in a professional setting. She could hear the hesitation in his voice as he realized the seriousness of the complaint. By the time the call ended, she had made it clear: immediate action must be taken. The manager's behavior was unacceptable, and the bank needed to ensure it would not happen again. She didn't want revenge, she wanted accountability. She wanted a system where respect was automatic, not optional, and where bias could not override basic decency. Sitting back in her chair, she allowed herself a moment of quiet reflection. She was proud, not because of the confrontation, but because of how she handled it. She had maintained composure, acted decisively, and upheld her principles without losing control. That was the mark of true leadership, and she had demonstrated it once again. At the same time, she felt a spark of determination. This was only the beginning. There would be more challenges, more obstacles, more moments where people underestimated her because of her race, her gender, or her success. But she knew one thing for certain. She would meet every challenge with the same blend of calm, authority, and strategic action. No one would ever make her question her worth or her power. She stood, straightened her jacket, and looked out the window at the city below. The day had started like any other, but it had turned into a powerful reminder. Leadership was not only about building businesses or making deals. It was about standing firm, demanding respect, and refusing to accept anything less. She was ready for whatever came next. After leaving the bank, she didn't head straight back to her office. Instead, she drove slowly through the city streets, her mind working faster than the car. She replayed every detail of the encounter, analyzing what had happened and why. The manager's refusal wasn't just about policy. It was about something deeper. Bias, prejudice, assumptions about who she was or what she could do. And that realization didn't make her angry. It made her determined. Determined to turn the moment into action, not frustration. She thought about the other customers in the bank. Some had looked on quietly, some had whispered to each other, and some had seemed almost uncomfortable. She wondered how many of them had faced similar situations but didn't speak up. She realized that her response might set an example, that standing up with calm authority could inspire others to act the same way when they were treated unfairly. When she reached her office, she entered with purpose. The receptionist greeted her with a warm smile, unaware of the storm that had just occurred. She waved politely, thanking her, but her mind was already focused on the next steps. She needed to make sure this manager's behavior would not go unnoticed, and she needed to do it strategically. Reacting impulsively could make the situation messy, but a calculated approach could ensure accountability and prevent such incidents from happening again. She settled into her chair and opened her laptop. Her first move was to gather evidence. She had already received the confirmation from the corporate office that there was no reason to deny her service. She saved the email, printed the withdrawal slip, and noted down the exact time and location of the incident. Every detail mattered. She knew that a clear, factual account would be far more effective than emotions alone. Next, she drafted a concise but firm email to the regional director of the bank. She described the incident calmly, without exaggeration, highlighting the refusal, the excuses, and the dismissive attitude of the manager. She included the proof from corporate confirming that there was no legitimate reason to deny her service. Her words were precise, measured, and professional. She wanted the director to understand that this wasn't a simple complaint. It was a serious lapse in judgment and professionalism. While typing, she reflected on her own experiences. She had faced challenges throughout her life, often being underestimated or dismissed because of her background. She knew the feeling of having one's authority questioned unfairly, and she understood how quickly doubt could creep into someone's mind when they were confronted with bias. But she also knew how important it was to respond decisively, to show that injustice could not go unanswered. This wasn't about revenge. It was about principle. Once the email was sent, she didn't sit back waiting for a response. She took a few moments to breathe and then made a phone call to a trusted advisor. She explained the situation in detail, talking through the steps she had already taken and discussing potential outcomes. Her advisor listened carefully, offering perspective and advice. They discussed the importance of swift action, the potential for media attention if the incident escalated, and the broader message it could send about accountability and respect. As the call ended, she felt more focused than ever. She decided to follow up personally with the regional director, making it clear that she expected immediate action. She also knew that this situation could not be ignored by the bank. If it were allowed to slide, it would set a dangerous precedent not just for her, but for every customer who might face similar treatment in the future. Later that afternoon, she received a call from the regional director. His tone was cautious but respectful. He acknowledged the complaint and assured her that the situation was being reviewed. She listened carefully, asking questions and clarifying details. She emphasized the seriousness of the incident, not as a threat but as a clear statement that respect and professionalism were non-negotiable. She left the conversation feeling confident that the bank understood the gravity of the matter. Even as she handled the situation professionally, she couldn't ignore the emotional weight of the encounter. Being denied service at her own bank had felt humiliating, and yet she had maintained her composure. She realized that emotions could be powerful tools if managed correctly. Anger could motivate action, but calm clarity commanded respect. She allowed herself a quiet moment to reflect on that balance, appreciating the strength it took to stay composed in a challenging moment. The next day, she returned to the bank. She wanted to observe, not confront. As she walked in, she noticed the same tellers and staff who greeted her with cautious smiles. The atmosphere felt different, tenser, more careful. She approached the counter, not with aggression but with the same quiet confidence as before. The manager, however, was not at his usual post. A new employee greeted her politely, asking if she needed assistance. She realized that her actions were already having an impact. She completed her banking quickly, noting the efficiency and professionalism of the staff, but she knew this was only a temporary fix. The manager needed to be held accountable, not just removed temporarily from duties. She left the bank and headed to a meeting with her business team, reflecting on the broader lesson of the incident. Leadership was not only about business decisions. It was about standing up for what was right, setting standards, and ensuring accountability. Later that week, she was invited to a community event focused on women in business. She shared her experience with the audience not to seek sympathy, but to highlight the importance of confronting bias and advocating for oneself. She spoke about maintaining composure, acting decisively, and using every available tool to ensure justice. Her story resonated deeply, with several attendees expressing how inspired they felt by her approach. By midweek, she received another communication from the bank. This time, the message was more formal. The regional director acknowledged that the manager's behavior was unacceptable and confirmed that disciplinary action would be taken. She felt a sense of satisfaction, knowing that her insistence on accountability had led to real consequences. This was not about punishment. It was about creating a culture of respect and professionalism. Throughout all of this, she reflected on her own growth. She had faced countless challenges in her career, but this incident reinforced a key lesson. Staying calm, being precise, and acting strategically could overcome even the most unexpected obstacles. She thought about the other women and business leaders who might face similar challenges, and she realized that her response could serve as a model for navigating difficult situations. In the evenings, as she relaxed in her home office, she took time to write down her thoughts and strategies. She outlined steps for handling bias and obstacles in professional settings, emphasizing the importance of preparation, composure, and clear communication. Her notes were practical, grounded in her own experience and designed to help others navigate challenges without losing their dignity or focus. By the end of the week, she had fully processed the event. The initial frustration and shock had transformed into clarity and determination. She knew that challenges would continue to arise, but she also knew that her ability to respond effectively, calmly, and decisively would remain her greatest strength. The incident at the bank was not just a personal victory. It was a reaffirmation of the principles that guided her life and leadership. She reflected on the subtle power dynamics at play in everyday interactions. People often underestimated others based on superficial characteristics, assuming authority or competence without truly understanding the individual. She realized that challenging these assumptions required not just courage, but careful, strategic action. By confronting the situation calmly and firmly, she had disrupted the expected narrative and asserted her rightful authority. In the days that followed, she also noticed changes in the bank's environment. Employees were more attentive, more careful, and more professional. The incident had created a ripple effect, demonstrating the power of accountability and the importance of standing firm in the face of injustice. She felt a quiet satisfaction in knowing that her actions had made a tangible difference, not just for herself, but for others who might face similar challenges in the future. She also took time to reflect on her personal growth through this experience. She had always valued resilience, but the incident reminded her that resilience was not just about enduring difficulties. It was about responding to them with strategy, composure, and integrity. She felt proud, not because she had been confronted with bias, but because she had transformed that confrontation into a moment of leadership and clarity. By the end of part 2, she had turned an upsetting and potentially humiliating encounter into an opportunity for reflection, growth, and strategic action. She understood that true leadership was not defined by titles or wealth, but by the ability to act decisively, maintain integrity, and create meaningful change in the world around her. By the following morning, she was fully prepared to take the next step. The initial shock of being denied service at her own bank had faded, replaced by focus and clarity. She knew that merely getting her withdrawal processed was not enough. The manager's behavior needed to be addressed directly, not only to hold him accountable but also to send a clear message that disrespect and bias would not be tolerated. She had learned over the years that decisive action was always more effective than waiting or complaining silently. She arrived at the bank with the same calm confidence she always carried. The building looked ordinary on the outside, but inside she felt the weight of what had happened and the urgency of what needed to be done. As she walked in, she noticed that the atmosphere had shifted slightly. Some tellers looked more alert, while a few customers glanced curiously at her, sensing that something unusual was about to happen. She greeted the staff politely, nodding to familiar faces, but her mind was already focused on the task ahead. When she reached the counter, she asked to speak directly with the regional manager. The new employee who greeted her hesitated for a moment but quickly made the call. Within minutes, a middle-aged man with a professional but nervous demeanor appeared. She explained the situation calmly, recounting the incident with precise details. She emphasized the refusal of service, the dismissive attitude of the previous manager, and the proof from corporate confirming that there was no legitimate reason to deny her withdrawal. The regional manager listened carefully, nodding and taking notes. She could see the realization in his eyes that this was a serious lapse in professionalism. She maintained her composure, speaking firmly but without aggression. Her goal was not to attack, but to ensure accountability and to make it clear that actions have consequences. She had learned that authority and respect often came not from anger, but from calm, unwavering confidence. As she spoke, she noticed the subtle reactions of the staff around them. Some looked embarrassed, realizing they had witnessed the incident and now understood the seriousness of it. Others looked curious, as if they were learning a lesson in real time about leadership, respect, and accountability. She allowed these small observations to strengthen her resolve, understanding that this situation had the potential to create a broader impact beyond just her own experience. After explaining the situation, she asked directly about the next steps. The regional manager hesitated, clearly unsure of the proper course of action, but she waited patiently, giving him the space to respond. She knew that decisive action was necessary, and she also knew that it was her responsibility to ensure that it happened correctly. She did not raise her voice, nor did she display frustration. Her calm authority made it clear that she expected immediate results. Finally, the regional manager admitted that the behavior of the branch manager was unacceptable and promised that disciplinary action would be taken. She listened carefully, confirming that this action would be swift and meaningful. She emphasized that accountability was not optional, and that the incident should serve as a reminder to all staff that professionalism and respect are non-negotiable. She knew that words alone were not enough. Actions needed to follow quickly to reinforce the lesson. With the conversation concluded, she asked to see the branch manager directly. The request was met with hesitation, but within moments the manager was called to the office. He entered with a stiff posture, clearly aware that the situation had escalated far beyond what he had expected. She greeted him calmly, maintaining eye contact, and allowed a moment of silence to settle. That silence spoke volumes, emphasizing the gravity of the situation. "I understand that there may have been confusion regarding the procedures," she began, her voice steady and controlled. "However, your refusal to provide service was completely unacceptable. This is not a matter of policy. It is a matter of respect, professionalism, and accountability. You need to understand the impact of your actions." The manager shifted uncomfortably, avoiding her gaze. He tried to offer excuses about protocol and policies, but she stopped him gently but firmly. "I am not interested in excuses," she said. "I am interested in accountability. Your behavior today undermined the integrity of this branch and violated the trust of a valued customer. That cannot happen again." Her words were calm, but their weight was undeniable. The manager's shoulders slumped slightly, realizing that he could not argue his way out of the situation. He understood that the moment required more than an apology. It required acknowledgement of responsibility and consequences. She paused, allowing him to process the reality of the situation. Leadership, she had learned, is often about creating moments where people must confront the truth of their actions. She gave him that moment, letting the silence reinforce the seriousness of what had occurred. Then, with precision, she made her decision clear. Because this behavior cannot be tolerated, the necessary steps will be taken immediately. You will no longer manage this branch. This decision is effective now. The words hung in the air. The manager's eyes widened in shock. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. The staff around them looked on, some stunned, others relieved that justice had been served. She did not gloat or relish the moment. She simply stated the facts. Accountability had been enforced and the lesson had been delivered. Once the manager had been escorted out, she turned her attention back to the branch staff. She addressed them with a firm but encouraging tone, emphasizing the importance of professionalism, respect, and proper customer service. She highlighted that their work mattered, and that upholding standards was essential not only for the reputation of the bank, but also for the well-being of every customer they served. The staff listened carefully, some nodding, others taking notes mentally. She made it clear that this was not about fear. It was about understanding the importance of responsibility and the impact of their actions. Leadership, she reminded them, was not only about titles or authority, but about treating people with respect and ensuring fairness in every interaction. After addressing the staff, she completed her own banking needs quickly and efficiently. There were no further issues. The remaining tellers were professional and attentive. She noticed a subtle shift in the atmosphere. Employees moved with more care, interactions were smoother, and there was a quiet sense of respect in the air. The incident had left a mark, and the lesson was clear. Professionalism and respect were non-negotiable. As she left the bank, she reflected on what had just occurred. The situation had been tense, challenging, and uncomfortable, but it had also been an opportunity to demonstrate leadership, composure, and strategic action. She had turned a moment of disrespect into a moment of empowerment, not just for herself but for others who had witnessed the event. She also considered the broader implications. Bias and discrimination often manifest in subtle ways in ordinary places like a bank branch. Confronting these issues required not anger but clarity, decisiveness, and courage. By addressing the manager directly and ensuring accountability, she had disrupted the expected pattern of behavior and reinforced the principle that respect is a standard, not a privilege. Later that day, she spoke with a few colleagues about the incident. She shared the details calmly, emphasizing the importance of responding effectively to bias and unfair treatment. Her colleagues were impressed not only by the outcome, but by the way she had handled the situation with grace and authority. They discussed the broader lessons: how to maintain composure under pressure, how to use strategic thinking to address challenges, and how accountability strengthens both individuals and organizations. That evening, as she reviewed her day, she allowed herself a moment of quiet satisfaction. The manager had been held accountable, the staff had learned a valuable lesson, and the principles of respect and professionalism had been reinforced. She realized that this was leadership in action, responding decisively, maintaining integrity, and ensuring that standards are upheld, even in unexpected circumstances. She also reflected on her personal growth through the experience. She had faced challenges before, but this incident reinforced her understanding of the importance of calm authority, strategic action, and clear communication. She had transformed a moment of frustration and disrespect into an opportunity for empowerment, learning, and leadership. By the end of the day, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. The incident at the bank had been more than a personal affront. It had been a reminder of the importance of standing firm, taking action, and ensuring that respect is never optional. She knew that challenges would continue to arise, but she also knew that her ability to respond effectively, calmly, and decisively would remain her greatest strength. And as she looked out of her office window at the city skyline, she felt a quiet confidence. The day had been difficult, but it had also been a demonstration of the power of composure, clarity, and leadership. She had faced bias, confronted it directly, and ensured that justice was served. And in doing so, she had reaffirmed not only her own principles but also the importance of accountability, respect, and professionalism in every aspect of life. The next morning, she walked into the bank with a sense of calm determination. The events of the previous days had reinforced a lesson she already knew well. Leadership was not just about making decisions in a boardroom or building a business. It was about taking action in moments when integrity and respect were challenged. Today, she was not here to argue or complain. She was here to ensure that the right things happened and that accountability was enforced fully. As she entered, she immediately noticed the subtle shift in the environment. Employees moved with more care, their conversations quieter, their smiles more cautious. Some glanced her way with a hint of curiosity or respect, realizing that the person who had confronted the manager was someone who did not back down. She walked to the counter, greeted the staff politely, and asked for the regional manager. A few moments later, he arrived, his demeanor professional but clearly aware of the gravity of the situation. She recapped the incident, emphasizing the manager's refusal to serve her, the dismissive attitude, and the proof from corporate that confirmed there was no reason to deny her withdrawal. She spoke with calm authority, choosing her words carefully, making it clear that she expected swift and decisive action. Her tone was firm but not aggressive, and her presence carried the weight of experience and credibility. The regional manager listened attentively, nodding, and acknowledged that disciplinary action had been taken. He explained that the branch manager would no longer be managing the branch, and that measures were being implemented to prevent such incidents from occurring in the future. She appreciated the update, but knew that the situation required direct engagement with the manager to ensure accountability was understood clearly. Moments later, the former branch manager was called into the office. He entered with hesitation, his posture stiff, his eyes betraying a mix of embarrassment and anxiety. He understood that the moment had arrived to face the consequences of his actions. She greeted him calmly, giving him a moment to absorb the seriousness of the situation. "Your actions over the past few days have been unacceptable," she began. "Refusing to provide service to a customer, especially when that customer is the account holder, is not a minor mistake. It is a violation of professionalism and trust. You must understand the gravity of your behavior. The manager tried to offer an explanation, citing procedural rules and policies, but she interrupted gently but firmly. I am not interested in excuses. What matters is accountability. Your behavior has consequences, and today, those consequences will be made clear. You will no longer manage this branch, effective immediately. The manager's face registered shock, but she remained calm, letting her words carry their full weight. There was no need to shout, no need to show anger. The clarity of her statement, combined with the authority of her position and experience, made the decision undeniable. The staff in the room listened quietly, absorbing the lesson about accountability, respect, and the consequences of unprofessional behavior. Once the decision was delivered, she turned her attention to the remaining staff. She spoke with a tone that was firm yet encouraging, emphasizing the importance of professionalism, respect, and responsibility. She reminded them that their actions, no matter how small, affected the reputation of the branch and the experience of customers. She encouraged them to view this moment not with fear, but as an opportunity to uphold high standards and maintain integrity in every interaction. The staff nodded, some taking mental notes, others reflecting on how easily a single lapse in judgment could create significant consequences. She highlighted that leadership was not only about authority or titles, it was about modeling behavior, making ethical choices, and standing up for what is right, even when it is uncomfortable. After addressing the staff, she completed her own banking efficiently. Every teller she interacted with displayed professionalism, attentiveness, and respect. She observed the subtle changes, the careful attention to protocol, the polite and clear communication, and the respectful manner in which staff engaged with customers. The atmosphere was calmer, yet it carried a new sense of awareness and accountability that had been absent before. Leaving the bank, she reflected on the lessons of the past few days. The initial shock, the denial of service, and the confrontation had all been uncomfortable, but they had also provided an opportunity for growth, both for her and for the staff she had influenced. She realized that moments of challenge often revealed character, and her own composure and decisiveness had set a standard that others would remember. Later, in the comfort of her office, she reviewed her thoughts about leadership and accountability. She understood that challenges and obstacles were inevitable, but they could be transformed into opportunities for positive change. By confronting the manager directly, ensuring proper action, and maintaining a calm and authoritative demeanor, she had demonstrated not just personal strength, but the power of strategic leadership. She also considered the broader implications of the incident. Bias and discrimination can appear in unexpected places, even in professional settings where rules and policies exist. Confronting these issues requires more than emotion. It requires preparation, clarity, and decisive action. By handling the situation effectively, she had not only ensured justice for herself, but had also set an example for others who might face similar challenges in their lives. In the days following the confrontation, she received messages from colleagues and friends who had heard about the incident. Many expressed admiration for the way she handled the situation, noting her composure, strategic thinking, and commitment to accountability. Some shared their own experiences of bias and discrimination, and she encouraged them to respond with clarity and authority, using the lessons from her approach as guidance. She also took time to reflect on the subtle impact her actions had on the bank's staff. Even those who had initially been passive observers began to show more attentiveness and professionalism. She recognized that her approach had created a ripple effect, demonstrating that accountability and respect are not abstract concepts, but principles that guide real behavior. Throughout all of this, she maintained her focus on personal growth. She understood that leadership is often tested in unexpected moments, and that true strength comes from responding calmly, decisively, and ethically. She had transformed an unpleasant situation into a moment of empowerment, both for herself and for those around her. The experience also reminded her of the importance of setting boundaries and enforcing standards. Respect is not something to be negotiated or assumed. It must be earned and maintained. By confronting the manager and ensuring immediate consequences, she had reinforced the principle that professional conduct is non-negotiable. and that unethical or disrespectful behavior cannot go unchecked. She reflected on how such experiences could shape her approach to leadership moving forward. Each challenge provides an opportunity to reinforce values, inspire others, and create positive change. She recognized that the lessons learned from this incident would continue to influence her decisions, interactions, and strategies in both professional and personal contexts. As she prepared for the next stage of her workday, she felt a quiet sense of accomplishment. The confrontation had been difficult, but it had been necessary. She had maintained control, upheld her principles, and ensured accountability. In doing so, she had demonstrated that true leadership is about integrity, decisiveness, and the courage to act when it matters most. By the evening, the story of the incident had begun to spread quietly among the local business community. Colleagues admired not only the outcome, but also the way she handled the situation, with composure, professionalism, and strategic thinking. It became a subtle lesson for others on the importance of standing firm in the face of disrespect and bias, and on the power of decisive action when accountability is required. She took a moment to document her reflections, outlining the steps she had taken and the principles that guided her response. She wrote about the importance of preparation, calm authority, and clear communication. She emphasized that leadership is not just about managing businesses, but about standing up for fairness, integrity, and respect in every situation. By the end of Part 4, she had fully navigated the confrontation, ensured accountability, and reinforced her own principles. The manager had been removed, the staff had learned a valuable lesson, and the bank environment had shifted to one of increased professionalism and awareness. She understood that her actions had a lasting impact, not just for herself, but for the broader community and for anyone who might face similar challenges in the future. By the next day, she felt a sense of calm satisfaction. The confrontation with the branch manager was over. Accountability had been enforced, and the staff had learned their lesson. Yet, she understood that the impact of what had happened went far beyond the walls of that single bank branch. It was a reminder of the importance of standing firm, using authority wisely, and demonstrating leadership in unexpected moments. The experience had left her with reflections she knew would guide her in the future. She started her morning reviewing her schedule, but her mind kept returning to the bank. She thought about how easily respect can be overlooked, how quickly bias can influence decisions, and how often people fail to hold themselves accountable. It wasn't enough to be successful or to command respect in her own sphere. She knew that standing up in these everyday moments was equally important. True leadership, she reflected, is measured not just in achievements but in the courage to act when principles are challenged. Later in the morning, she received a call from the regional director of the bank. He sounded genuinely contrite, expressing his regret for what had happened and assuring her that measures were being implemented to prevent similar situations. She listened carefully, appreciating the professional acknowledgement, but also reminded him that accountability needed to be continuous, not just a one-time response. She spoke calmly but firmly, emphasizing that the lessons of this incident should be embedded in the culture of the branch and the wider organization. After the call, she took a quiet moment to reflect. Leadership, she realized, was not only about confronting mistakes or asserting authority. It was also about teaching, mentoring, and creating a ripple effect that inspires change in others. She thought about the branch staff, who had witnessed the situation and learned a lesson about professionalism and respect. She hoped that their understanding would extend beyond compliance with rules and into a genuine commitment to fairness and accountability. She decided to write down her thoughts. On paper, she outlined the key principles that had guided her through the incident: calm, authority, strategic action, clarity in communication, and the courage to enforce accountability. She reflected on how these principles applied not just in banking or business, but in everyday life. She recognized that challenges, bias, and disrespect were not limited to one environment. They could appear anywhere, at any time. And her response in those moments defined her character and influence. By mid-afternoon, she had completed her own work for the day and decided to visit a nearby community center where she occasionally spoke to young professionals and entrepreneurs. She shared her experience, focusing not on personal grievance but on the lessons it offered about leadership, integrity, and standing up for oneself. The audience listened intently, drawn to the way she recounted the story with calm authority, emphasizing both the challenge and the strategic way she had handled it. She explained that confronting bias or disrespect is rarely easy, but it is essential. She encouraged them to approach such situations with preparation, clarity, and composure. Anger or frustration, she explained, can cloud judgment. Calm, deliberate action, however, commands respect and ensures results. She also emphasized the importance of accountability, not only holding others responsible, but also ensuring that one's own actions reflect integrity and professionalism at all times. The young professionals were inspired. Some shared their own stories of being underestimated, dismissed, or overlooked. She listened carefully, offering practical advice about maintaining composure, asserting authority, and using strategic communication to navigate difficult situations. She reminded them that leadership is not limited to titles or positions. It is demonstrated in actions, in decisions, and in the way one responds to challenges. Returning home later that evening, she reflected on the week's events. She thought about the branch manager who had faced immediate consequences and about the staff who had learned a powerful lesson. She realized that respect and accountability are not abstract ideas. They are principles that shape behavior, influence environments, and create cultures of trust and integrity. She felt satisfied knowing that her actions had contributed to reinforcing those principles. She also thought about the customers who had witnessed the incident. Some had seemed surprised, others uncomfortable, yet she imagined that the memory of the situation would influence how they viewed authority, fairness, and respect in their own lives. She hoped that her calm, decisive response would serve as an example, showing that standing up for what is right does not require confrontation or aggression, but clarity, confidence, and strategic action. Later that night, she made notes for herself about leadership lessons learned. She emphasized that challenges often appear in ordinary, unexpected moments, at a bank, in a meeting, or during routine interactions. The way one responds to these moments reveals character, shapes influence, and sets standards for others to follow. She reminded herself that true strength is not measured by confrontation alone, but by the ability to maintain integrity, exercise calm authority, and enforce accountability effectively. She also reflected on personal growth. The incident, while uncomfortable, had reaffirmed her confidence and resilience. She realized that obstacles are inevitable in life, but the response to them defines success. By maintaining composure and taking strategic action, she had turned a potentially humiliating experience into a demonstration of leadership and empowerment. This was a lesson she intended to carry forward, both for herself and for those she mentored. The following week, she returned to the bank once more, not out of necessity, but to observe the environment. She noticed subtle yet significant changes. The staff were attentive, polite, and professional. Interactions with customers were efficient and respectful, and the atmosphere carried a sense of awareness and accountability. She smiled quietly, recognizing that her actions had a lasting impact. Change, she realized, often begins with a single decisive moment. As she left the bank, she reflected on the journey from initial shock and denial of service to the resolution and broader lessons. She thought about how easily one could be underestimated, dismissed, or denied fairness, and how essential it was to stand firm with clarity and integrity. She recognized that every challenge offers an opportunity to reinforce principles, demonstrate leadership, and inspire others. In the days that followed, she shared her experience in small circles, at business meetings, mentoring sessions, and community events. She emphasized the importance of assertiveness, preparation, and composure. She encouraged others to act decisively when faced with bias or disrespect, reminding them that accountability is a key component of professional and personal integrity. She also took time to reflect privately. The incident at the bank had been a reminder that success is not just about achievements, wealth, or status. It is about standing firm in the face of injustice, leading by example, and turning challenges into opportunities for growth. She realized that her calm, strategic approach had not only resolved the immediate problem, but had also created a ripple effect, reinforcing standards of respect and professionalism that would endure. By the end of the week, she felt a sense of closure. The branch manager had been held accountable, the staff had learned their lesson, and the culture of the branch had shifted for the better. She had not acted out of anger or revenge. She had acted from principle, And in doing so, she had reinforced her own values, set a standard for others, and demonstrated the power of decisive, thoughtful leadership. As she looked back on the incident, she felt a sense of pride, not in confrontation, but in composure, clarity, and effectiveness. She knew that challenges would continue to arise, but she also knew that her ability to respond with calm authority and strategic action would remain her greatest strength. She had faced an unexpected obstacle, turned it into an opportunity for accountability, and emerged stronger, wiser, and more confident. That night, she reflected on the lessons she would carry forward. Always stand firm when principles are challenged. Maintain composure in difficult situations. Take decisive action when needed, and ensure that respect and accountability are upheld. She understood that these principles applied not only in business but in every area of life, and that they would guide her in the years to come. And as she prepared for the next day, she felt ready. The bank incident had tested her, challenged her, and ultimately strengthened her. She had turned a moment of bias and denial into a story of empowerment, leadership, and integrity. She knew that she had not only handled the situation for herself, but had also set an example for countless others who might face similar challenges. In the end, she understood that true leadership is about action, integrity, and influence. It is about standing up for what is right, even in ordinary moments, and turning challenges into opportunities for growth. She had done all that and more, leaving a lasting impact not only on the people involved but also on the culture of the institution and the broader community. And as she finally rested that evening, she felt a deep sense of satisfaction. The ordeal was over, the lessons had been learned, and the principles she valued had been reinforced. She had demonstrated that calm, decisive action in the face of injustice is not only effective, it is transformative. She had taken control of the situation, upheld accountability, and turned an unexpected challenge into a story of empowerment and leadership that would inspire others for years to come.